welcome to this deep dive. You sent in your questions about navigating life's twists and turns, finding a sense of self, and cultivating inner peace.
Right, and we've been looking at the wisdom of Thich Niem, specifically from a recent Viet or a YouTube discussion where he tackled a whole range of these topics.
Exactly. And the questions we're focusing on today really cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, they really do. Everything from those big fundamental questions about purpose and meaning to the everyday struggles like healing from past stuff or just trusting your own gut feeling.
We're definitely talking about feeling lost, that sense of uncertainty, the weight of despair, sometimes maybe a lack of purpose. And also, how do you discover your unique value, when the world's constantly telling you who you should be?
That's a big one. And then there's healing from childhood, emotional neglect, how that plays out in relationships.
Yeah, that came up. And distinguishing intuition from, well, just putting things off.
Right, procrastination. And defining success for yourself, not just by society's standards.
So our mission here, for you listening, is to pull out the really practical, insightful bits from this exchange.
Kind of like offering some real-world guidance for your own growth and maybe a deeper, more compassionate way of understanding yourself.
Okay, let's dive in then.
Let's do it.
So first up, that feeling of being lost. Someone asked Thich Niem, how do you know if you're heading the right way when everything just feels uncertain, foggy?
Yeah, it's such a common feeling. And it's tough because your instinct is to look for some kind of definitive sign, right? A clear confirmation.
Definitely.
But Thich Niem offers a really interesting perspective. He says, when those clear signs just aren't there, you can temporarily kind of place your trust in a state of inner peace.
Inner peace, okay. Not an external sign, but something internal. What does that actually feel like? What are the markers of this state he's talking about?
Well, he describes it as a noticeable lack of overwhelming emotions. You feel genuine, like you're acting from your true self.
Authentic.
Yeah, authentic. And there's a sense that you actually have some control, some agency in designing your life. And crucially, there's a feeling of safety. Like deep down, you feel secure.
I see. So it's less about like a burst of happiness and more about a stable foundation.
Exactly, a deep-seated stability. So the idea is you try to live from that place of relative calm.
And then see what happens.
Precisely. You observe, do the outcomes start to align with what you hope for? Does it feel right over time? Does this path feel, authentic?
Right.
And he adds a really important warning. Be careful about making big decisions when you're caught up in like a temporary emotional high or low.
Yeah. Those impulsive choices.
They can easily push you down a path that isn't really yours.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what about when it's more than just uncertainty? When it gets much heavier? We had a listener talking about profound despair, questioning their purpose, even thoughts of ending their life. That's incredibly difficult.
It really is.
Yeah.
And Thich Niem's first response really emphasizes self-care and a change of environment. He strongly suggests, if it's at all possible, taking a break from the usual routine.
Getting away.
Yeah, seeking out somewhere peaceful. He mentioned the countryside or the mountains, just somewhere quiet. Think of it like hitting pause on a really intense movie.
Okay, so the idea is to interrupt that negative spiral by changing your surroundings.
Exactly, because when you're feeling that overwhelmed, your mental and emotional batteries are just drained. You're running on empty.
And that distorts everything.
Completely. It totally warps how you see yourself and your life. He even mentioned that if someone feels they can't cope alone, seeking support, maybe at his center, could be an option.
And what's the hoped-for outcome of changing the scenery like that for someone in that really dark place?
The potential is, well, a real shift in perspective. Sometimes just being in a different, calmer space allows you to notice the small things again.
Like
simple joys, the warmth of the sun, maybe a kind word from someone, the taste of food. It's a chance to reconnect with just the basic feeling of being alive. He talks about how sometimes that deep despair comes from feeling disconnected from a deeper purpose, like the roots anchoring you to life have been weakened or severed.
So it's about trying to nurture those roots again, finding that connection to the present.
Yes, exactly. By appreciating the simple act of being here. He actually shared a bit about his own past experience with similar feelings and how intentionally shifting his focus was transformative.
Wow.
The absolute key message here is, don't trust those intensely negative perceptions as the whole truth. Actively look for a way out, get some space, find support as soon as you possibly can.
That's such vital advice. Okay, let's pivot slightly. A common challenge, maybe less intense, but still significant, figuring out who you are when the world throws so much at you. How do you find your unique value in all that noise?
It really is like walking a tightrope these days, isn't it? Thich Niem's advice is about balance. You need to engage with the world, yes, but also consciously carve out dedicated time for self-reflection and practice.
Practice. Like what kind of practice?
Developing yourself.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, ethically, looking after your well-being, working on clarity of mind, strengthening your moral compass.
So it's not about hiding away, but about intentional inner work.
Precisely. He explains that as you actively cultivate these inner qualities, things like kindness, maybe being more generous, sharing your own unique strengths and talents naturally start to surface.
Ah, okay.
And he makes a really interesting point. Often when we feel like we lack individuality, it's because we haven't spent enough quality time just being with ourselves.
So we end up just imitating others.
Yeah, unconsciously sometimes. We just absorb what's around us without checking in with our own core.
That definitely resonates. It's so easy to compare. Does he connect this to confidence as well?
Yes, absolutely. He differentiates between confidence that relies on external approval, what other people think.
Right, validation seeking.
Exactly. And genuine self-confidence, that deeper kind comes from living in alignment with universal values, things that just feel inherently true and right.
Okay.
He uses this lovely analogy, polishing jade. It's slow, deliberate work. It takes patience and persistence to reveal that inner worth.
I like that image.
But the result is something genuinely valuable. So the encouragement is really to commit to that process of self-examination, self-discovery, and just be patient with it.
Polishing the jade. Got it.
Yeah.
Let's move to something that touches many people very deeply, healing from childhood emotional neglect, and how those early experiences affect our adult relationships. Someone asked about learning to love fully after that kind of trauma and its impact on their marriage.
Yeah, this is a really sensitive and crucial area. Thich Niem explains that childhood trauma often leaves these deep, lasting patterns.
How do they show up in relationships?
Well, sometimes it might be a fear of abandonment, leading to maybe clinginess or dependency, or conversely, it could be a fear of intimacy, causing someone to push people away.
Okay.
The core issue is often those unmet childhood needs for recognition, for validation, for love. They can feel like this bottomless pit inside.
Easily triggered by things happening now?
Exactly. Current relationship dynamics can constantly poke at those old wounds. He talks about the inner child here.
Right. Can you unpack that concept a bit? What does he mean by inner child?
He describes it as like a pocket of trapped emotional data from your past, unprocessed feelings, unmet needs, old beliefs formed in childhood.
Okay, trapped data. So what's the solution then?
The solution he offers is to consciously, intentionally become a loving parent to yourself, to nurture that inner child.
Reparenting yourself, that sounds like quite a task. How does that work day to day?
He uses a powerful image. Think of a mother immediately responding to her crying baby with care, attention, love. You need to offer that same focused, compassionate attention to yourself where those old feelings just had up the inner child's distress surface.
So noticing when it happens and responding kindly.
Yes, and a big part of it is becoming aware of your triggers. What sets off those feelings? Is it when you're tired, stressed, exposed to certain negative people or situations, dwelling on the past?
Okay, identifying the triggers.
Exactly. And mindfulness, maybe through meditation, is super helpful here. It lets you observe those feelings arise without getting swept away.
Observe, not become the feeling.
Precisely. The crucial insight is realizing these feelings are echoes. They're old data. They aren't necessarily the truth of this moment, and they don't have to control your actions now. And through giving yourself that consistent, loving attention and understanding of these feelings aren't permanent, the inner child gradually loses its power. It becomes less dominant.
So the steps are recognize the feeling, give yourself dedicated care, and understand it's past data, not present reality.
That sums it up perfectly. It's about providing that consistent love and security that maybe wasn't fully there in childhood.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Something many of us grapple with daily. Intuition versus, well, laziness. How do you tell the difference? Someone found it hard to know if a gut feeling was real guidance or just an excuse to avoid something.
Yes, the intuition versus procrastination dilemma. It's very common. Thich Niem actually advises caution here. Don't just blindly trust every impulse you label intuition.
Why not? Isn't intuition supposed to be reliable?
It can be, but our perceptions aren't always accurate. Sometimes other things masquerade as intuition. His key recommendation is to cultivate a calmer state of mind before trying to listen for that inner guidance.
So it's not about a sudden flash necessarily, more like a deeper knowing from a settled place.
Exactly. He suggests practices like mindful walking or just sitting quietly in contemplation. These help you get clearer on your real motivations. Why do I want to do this? Why am I hesitant?
Okay.
Because sometimes, he points out, what feels like a strong intuitive hit might just be a fleeting impulse, or maybe wishful thinking, or, yes, sometimes just plain laziness dressed up nicely.
Huh.
And he also warns about the potential downsides of always intuiting your way out of effort. It can lead to real-world problems, like financial stress, which then feeds back into feeling down.
So if your intuition consistently tells you to avoid effort, maybe look deeper, what are the practical steps then?
Well, cultivate that inner stillness we keep talking about. And also, talk to people you trust. Get an outside perspective. Sometimes someone else can help you see if you're operating from wisdom or just avoidance.
That makes sense. Get a reality check. Okay, related to this, how do we know if a desire and aspiration is genuinely ours? Or if it's just something we've picked up from seeing others, from societal pressure?
Ah, yes. Where do our desires actually come from? That's a deep question. Thầy Minh Niệm acknowledges the usual approach. We often filter desires through our life experience, right? Is this realistic? Is it really necessary?
Sure, the practical filter.
But he offers another layer, another filter, using your level of mindfulness and inner peace as a kind of barometer.
How does that work? Does a truly authentic desire feel peaceful, harmonious?
That's exactly the idea. He shares his own practice, which now involves checking for that immediate inner alignment. Does this desire resonate deep down? Does it feel right now?
And that comes from practice.
Yes, years of cultivating mindfulness. He contrasts it with earlier times when he needed longer periods of quiet reflection to get that same clarity. The key is to honestly ask, what does this desire serve? Is it connected to my core values, my deeper purpose, or is it just a surface level thing, maybe driven by wanting what others have? And again, the clearest answers always arise when the mind is calm and peaceful, not agitated or comparing.
Quieting the noise to hear your own signal. Got it. Let's talk about success. How do we define it for ourselves meaningfully, beyond just money or status? And how do we enjoy the present without feeling like we're just dodging responsibility for the future?
This is about a fundamental shift in how we view achievement. Thich Niem really encourages us to free ourselves from constantly seeking external validation.
Stop waiting for society's gold star.
Exactly. He champions creating your own personal definition of success, one that genuinely reflects your unique values and what matters most to you.
And this doesn't have to be some huge monumental thing.
Absolutely not. He gives these beautiful, simple examples. Finding success in mindfully making tea, or having a truly present, meaningful conversation, cooking a meal with full attention.
Small successes.
Yes, these small successes build on each other, creating a larger sense of fulfillment. And he really emphasizes inner success, developing self-discipline, managing your emotions, building resilience as the foundation for any external accomplishments.
The inner work supports the outer.
It's that principle again. Inner peace leads to outer harmony. Start within.
I really like that. It feels much more attainable and, frankly, more meaningful. Now, related to enjoying the present, someone reflected that how they live each day feels more important now than the big goals they used to have. But this conflicted with the idea that you need a clear purpose. What's the take on journey versus destination?
He suggests it's not really an either situation. We can, and perhaps should, integrate both.
Both focusing on the day and having bigger goals.
Yes. Focus on living each day with intention, with integrity. That can be a primary purpose in itself. He shares that for him, living ethically and trying to benefit others daily is a core purpose.
Okay.
But he also works on larger projects for the community. He holds those aspirations. But he also acknowledges wisely that those big goals might not always fully happen. So many factors are outside our control.
Right. You can't guarantee the outcome.
Exactly. So focusing your energy on living well now is actually the most reliable way to build a positive future. It's about balance. Have aspirations, have a direction, but act decisively and mindfully in the present.
That feels like a very grounded approach. Okay, a big one now. I think almost everyone can relate to this. Changing those stubborn habits we know aren't good for us. Old habits die hard, as they say. Is change really possible?
He definitely acknowledges it's difficult. Breaking patterns takes effort. But he's very clear. Meaningful change is absolutely possible. It just requires, well, method, determination, and time.
Okay, so it's not impossible. Where do you start?
You recommend starting small. Pick easier changes first. Maybe establishing a consistent daily routine like waking up a bit earlier or setting aside time for quiet reflection each day.
Little wins build momentum.
Exactly. Small changes can trigger bigger shifts. He also mentions that sometimes immersing yourself in a supportive environment like a retreat or a like-minded community can really help kickstart more significant change.
Makes sense. Changing your context?
But the bottom line is, all change requires effort. It has its price, as he puts it. You have to be willing to put in the work.
Right.
And he brings in that core Buddhist concept of impermanence. Nothing is fixed. Everything can change, including ourselves and our habits. He even points to his own life journey overcoming profound suffering to find lasting happiness as proof that deep transformation is possible.
That's incredibly hopeful. Okay, final topic area. This one feels a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
How do you balance feeling content, feeling like you have enough, with that natural human desire to keep learning and growing? How can you know enough but still want to evolve?
That is a really nuanced and interesting question. Thich Niem clarifies that knowing enough can apply differently to different parts of life.
Like you can have enough stuff, but not enough wisdom.
Sort of, yeah. He gives the example of people who live very simply. They're genuinely content with their material possessions, their basic needs are met. But they still work, they still contribute, they still engage with life. He relates it to his own situation. He feels he has enough materially for his spiritual practice. But that doesn't stop him wanting to serve others, to share his understanding as much as possible without getting overwhelmed, of course.
So contentment in one area, like material life, can free up energy for growth elsewhere, like service or learning.
Precisely. He suggests that true contentment often signals a higher level of wisdom, recognizing values beyond just consuming more and more. He highlights how limited material fulfillment really is, compared to the kind of boundless joy you can find exploring life's deeper dimensions, connection, understanding, contribution.
Right. You can always go deeper there.
Exactly. And when you reduce the constant striving for more stuff, you free up time, energy, mental space.
For spiritual growth, for connection, for just experiencing the world more fully.
Yes. He warns against getting caught in that trap of endless material pursuit. It can consume your whole life and stop you from exploring what it truly means to be human.
So the ideal is finding that material contentment, that sense of enough, while staying engaged and continuing to contribute and grow in other ways.
That seems to be the balanced perspective, yes.
Yeah.
Contributing to the well-being of the community, of society, while being content within yourself.
This whole discussion has been so incredibly rich. Thich Niem also mentioned the Banthan program itself felt significant to him. Why was that?
Yeah, he shared that it fulfilled a long-held wish for him to share these kinds of deeper teachings widely, especially reaching younger people.
Okay.
He noted that really digging into the concept of self is complex and often hard to do justice in shorter formats. So this program gave him the space, the platform, to explore the self from multiple angles.
Like what angles?
Looking at what the self is not, exploring what our true nature might actually be, and even touching on transcending our usual ideas about the self altogether.
Deep stuff.
Definitely. He encouraged listeners, users, to maybe revisit parts that felt challenging, knowing that understanding can deepen over time. And he just expressed his real joy in sharing these insights, hoping they serve as guidance for a more peaceful, happy life journey.
And he acknowledged the team effort, too.
Absolutely. He made a point of recognizing the collaborative work behind it all.
So it really sounds like it came from the heart, aimed at offering practical wisdom for navigating this complex human experience. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap some key themes.
Okay.
We've talked about navigating uncertainty using inner peace as a compass, finding strength when facing despair, that journey of understanding your unique self.
Healing past wounds, telling intuition from laziness, defining your own success.
Right. Appreciating the journey itself, embracing change as possible, and finding that balance between contentment and growth.
And really, as Thich Niem intended, these are offered as pointers, as a personal guide for your own path of self-discovery.
So here's a final thought for you to take away. Which specific aspect of self-understanding that we touched on today really struck a chord with you? What resonated most deeply? And then maybe think about how you could practically apply that one insight, even in a small way, to your life right now. What's one tiny intentional step you could take, maybe today or tomorrow, towards that deeper understanding, that greater inner peace?
Just one small step.
Exactly. That's your focus for now. Until our next deep dive.